Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. We're heading far, far back in time. Before alarm clocks, before coffee, even before toast. Imagine waking up beside the Nile, thousands of years ago, when the world still smelled of wet reeds and smoke from clay ovens. The air's thick and warm, and the sand clings to your feet like it's trying to keep you there. You can almost hear the sound of someone grinding barley just beyond the tent flap. And trust me, if you had to live one morning in ancient Egypt, without coffee, without air conditioning, wearing a linen tunic in that heat, you probably wouldn't survive past sunrise. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where and when you're listening from. I love seeing how many time zones we drift across together. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your arms and blink at the golden shimmer rolling off the Nile. It's early, so early that the river still wears its morning fog like a shawl. Papyrus rustles behind you, and somewhere nearby, a heron lets out a slow, ancient croak that sounds suspiciously like a bored grandparent. You can smell barley in the air, rich, nutty, faintly sweet. The workers by the water are already awake, their outlines wobbling in the heat haze, even though the sun hasn't fully climbed the horizon yet. You shuffle closer, bare feet pressing the soft silt, watching a group of women knead dough in shallow bowls made from river clay. The dough's coarse, ground from emmer wheat, not the soft flour you'd recognize. It sticks to their fingers like wet sand, but they work fast, shaping little flat rounds that will soon bake against the sides of stone ovens. The sound is hypnotic. Slap, press, scrape, a rhythm older than history. Someone offers you a taste of the raw dough, because in this time, nobody worries about food safety. It's tangy, earthy, alive. The yeast isn't from a packet. It's wild, captured from the air, and mixed with old dough saved from yesterday. You chew, grimacing a little, and the baker laughs. To them, this is normal breakfast prep. To you, it's edible archaeology. The smell of smoke mixes with the faint metallic scent of the Nile. A fisherman drags his reed boat ashore, humming a tune that might be about love or taxes. It's hard to tell. He's carrying a net full of small silver fish. In a few hours, those fish will be salted, sun-dried, and served beside barley bread. Simple, but filling. You wander through the waking settlement, hearing chickens squawk, donkeys bray, and someone curse in Egyptian because the fire went out again. The houses are low, square, built from mud brick and bleached by the sun. Through open doorways, you spot families sitting on woven mats, eating from shallow bowls. The bowls hold something thick and beige, somewhere between soup and porridge. It's made from crushed barley mixed with date syrup and goat's milk. Breakfast comfort food, 2500 BCE edition. You can almost imagine it sold today in a hipster cafe as artisanal ancient grain fusion. A child runs past you with a crust of bread clutched in her hand, laughing, her feet kicking up dust. Behind her, her mother shouts something about not dropping it in the river again. The bread is precious, it's life itself, and the Nile, glittering lazily nearby, is its secret ingredient. Every loaf here is a gift from that muddy ribbon of water. You sit down by the riverbank, letting the world unfold. Someone next to you mutters a short prayer to Happy, God of the flood, thanking him for last season's harvest. His voice is soft, rhythmic, almost like a lullaby. It makes you think about how every bite of food, every sip of drink, is a small act of faith here. Eat today, and maybe the gods will be kind again tomorrow. There's a funny kind of peace in this simplicity. No rush hours, no alarms, just the slow choreography of people who've repeated the same motions for centuries. You feel it too. The pull of the river, the warmth of the sand, the whisper of smoke curling from the ovens. Somewhere far off, a priest chants a hymn to Ra, asking the sun to rise properly this time. Because if it didn't, breakfast plans would definitely be ruined. As the light strengthens, the colors shift, from soft gold to harsh white, from cool blue shadows to the blazing amber of a desert morning. The bakers slap the last loaves into the oven's curve, and one of them flicks you a crumb, just a crumb. You catch it, hold it on your tongue. It tastes faintly sour, faintly sweet, like something that's been waiting 5,000 years to be remembered. You lean back, close your eyes, and listen. The Nile hums like a sleeping creature. The air vibrates with life. Insects, birds, humans, all caught in the same slow morning dance. You could almost fall asleep right here, head resting against a sack of barley, lulled by the river's pulse. But the day's just starting, and somewhere upriver, another village is waking to the same smells, the same prayers, the same breakfast. You'll get there soon enough. For now, you just breathe, and let the sun touch your face like a blessing from a world that hasn't yet learned the word hurry. And as you rise, brushing off the dust, you can't help but smile at a simple thought. Even 5,000 years ago, people still complained about mornings. The road along the Nile feels softer now. Your steps sink slightly into the sand that still remembers last night's dew. You follow the smell of something warm and toasty, like burnt sugar and grain, winding through the air. Ahead, smoke curls from a round oven built half into the ground, and beside it, a woman hums as she presses dough flat between her hands. The hum carries the rhythm of the river, steady and unhurried. You crouch down to watch. The oven's mouth glows with orange heat, the kind that makes your eyelashes curl if you lean too close. She slaps the dough against the clay wall, and it sticks like magic. Within seconds, the edges bubble, turning from pale beige to a dappled gold. That's ta, the bread of the sun. It's breakfast, lunch, and religion rolled into one round disk. The woman smiles at you, sweat gleaming on her forehead. She flips the bread using a shard of pottery. Hot, she warns, though you've already leaned into inhale. The smell is hypnotic, nutty, smoky, a little sour. It's the scent of every morning in this land. You tear off a piece. It's chewy, dense, full of life. Bread, here, isn't just food. It's the foundation of existence. Pharaohs pay their workers in loaves. Priests bless them before feasts. Even the gods, according to temple carvings, seem to expect a daily offering of warm bread and a polite bow. As you eat, the baker tells you how this dough began 3 days ago. She mixed barley flour with leftover water from brewing beer. The yeast swirled through the air, invisible, ancient, alive. It grew overnight, bubbling like a living creature. If it sleeps too long, she says, it forgets. You laugh, but she's serious. She calls it the spirit of bread. And suddenly, you realize that every loaf has its own ghost. Behind you, a few children chase each other around the kiln, tossing pebbles. Their laughter mingles with the rhythmic puff of the fire. Someone brings more wood, scraps of palm fronds, dried dung, whatever burns. The smoke smells of earth and survival. Nearby, a man sharpens a bronze knife, waiting to slice cooled bread into thin pieces for the workers heading to the fields. He grins when you ask why not eat it fresh. Because if they do, he says, the gods will steal their appetite. You're not sure whether that's superstition or just ancient dieting advice. A donkey brays in the distance. Somewhere, a priest's voice rises again, calling to Ra, the sun god, whose eye now blazes above the horizon. The light hits the bread perfectly, making it glow like small suns in a clay sky. You can almost see why they thought the loaf itself was divine. You think of your modern breakfast, toast from a bag, maybe buttered, maybe not, and it suddenly feels cold, mechanical, devoid of any song or smoke. Here, every piece of bread is a small miracle, and every crumb means work, patience, and prayer. The woman tears another loaf in half and offers it to a small boy. He thanks her by kissing the edge before biting in, a gesture older than etiquette, born from gratitude. You remember that in ancient Egypt, the word for to eat and to live came from the same root. So when someone says, I have bread, they're really saying, I exist. A breeze drifts in from the Nile, carrying a hint of fish and silt. You watch the baker brush the ashes off her hands, her face serene. You'll remember this smell, she says softly, not as a question but a promise. And she's right. It's the smell of sunlit survival, of mornings that never hurry, of people who built pyramids but still worried about whether the dough was too wet. One of the men laughs as his bread collapses into the fire. "RA wanted that one," he shrugs. Everyone chuckles. You realize humor hasn't changed much in 5 millennia. Burnt toast jokes are eternal. You sit a while longer, nibbling slowly, the crust scratching pleasantly against your tongue. The baker hums again, a different tune now, lilting, dreamy. She talks about how her grandmother used to whisper to the dough before baking, asking it to rise kindly. "If you speak gently," she says, "the bread listens." You imagine Michelin chefs today taking notes on emotional gluten development. The sun climbs higher, bleaching the horizon. The Nile gleams like molten glass. Someone calls for more loaves to be carried to the laborers building a small temple nearby. They stack the bread in reed baskets, covering them with linen cloths. You glimpse one loaf shaped like a lotus flower, meant for the temple offering. Baked beauty, meant to please both man and God. You brush crumbs off your tunic and stand. The woman waves, a quick flick of her flour-dusted hand. You promise yourself you'll remember her, not her name, but her calm, her rhythm, her way of turning earth and heat into something that can feed a soul. As you walk away, the air feels heavier with sunlight. The road curves closer to the river again, and you realize this whole land moves in cycles. Water to grain, grain to bread, bread to life, life to prayer, and back again. You breathe it in, that warm blend of smoke and grain, and smile to yourself. Because even now, somewhere in your own kitchen far away, a loaf might be rising under a clean towel, whispering back across time. You keep walking, the smell of baked barley fading behind you, replaced by something sharper, fermented, almost yeasty. At first, you think it's more dough, but then you see the clay jars lined up under a reed awning, each one bubbling quietly like it's alive. A man with forearms dusted in grain grins at you. "Thirsty?" he asks, tapping one jar with a stick. The sound is dull, thick. He pours a ladleful into a cup made from a hollowed-out gourd and hands it to you. The liquid is cloudy, tan, and suspiciously viscous. You hesitate. He laughs, claps you on the back, and says, "Breakfast." You take a sip. It's dense, warm, sour, but not unpleasant. Somewhere between oatmeal and a beer that's forgotten its manners. The man chuckles at your face. "It's Hankit," he explains, "the morning brew, the beer that built Egypt." You try another mouthful. Okay, not terrible. It tastes like barley, honey, and a hint of smoke, with the body of thin porridge. You've definitely had worse smoothies. He gestures at the workers nearby, who are already drinking it straight from the jars, their mouths frothy, their laughter easy. "This," he says, "is food, not drink." And he's right. You can see the grain still swirling in the liquid, thick enough to chew. "Beer gives strength," he adds proudly. "And courage. You suspect it also gives morning headaches, but you keep that to yourself." The brew bubbles in your stomach, warm and oddly comforting. You feel a tiny buzz, not the dizzy kind, more like a hum through your veins. The man explains how they make it. Barley is baked into loaves, then crumbled into vats of water, left to ferment under the sun for days. No hops, no steel tanks, no brands, just wild yeast and hope. You look around and realize everyone drinks it. Men, women, children, even the priests before temple duties. It's breakfast, hydration, nutrition, and social glue all at once. A liquid breakfast of champions, literally. Somewhere, a scholar might argue whether this was Egypt's first energy drink. A young boy nearby dips bread into his cup, mashing it into a beige slurry and eating with gusto. You try it too. It's surprisingly satisfying, beer porridge. The breakfast of pyramid builders. You can imagine a marketing slogan. Rise like RA, powered by barley. The brewer sits beside you, wiping sweat from his neck. "You know," he says, "some say beer is the gift of Osiris himself. It calms the heart." You glance at his glazed eyes and think, "Yeah, I bet it does." He laughs when you ask about water. "The Nile? Too many fish spirits," he says solemnly. "Beer is safer." You realize that's not superstition. It's microbiology, 5,000 years ahead of schedule. The alcohol kills what the river gives. Ancient Egyptians might not have known about bacteria, but they knew how to stay alive and have a good time doing it. The brewery hums with activity. Women pour the mixture into conical jars, seal them with wet clay, and stamp them with small symbols, ownership marks, maybe even early branding. The oldest label design in the world, you think. Somewhere, a brewer scratches a lotus flower into the clay and grins. The smell is powerful, sour-sweet, alive. Bees hover nearby, curious, and children chase them away with reeds. The brewer gestures for you to follow. He shows you a small shrine tucked between jars, a clay figure of Bes, the dwarf god of laughter and protection. He guards the beer, the man says, and pats the statue's head affectionately. You nod, wondering how many hangovers Bes has silently witnessed over the millennia. You sit again, watching bubbles rise lazily in the jars. The beer must breathe, the brewer murmurs. Like the Nile. You notice the way the light shifts across the clay, pale at the rim, dark near the base, like dawn sinking into dusk. You take another sip, slower this time, and the taste deepens, malty, ancient, comforting. Somewhere outside, a priest chants a hymn. His voice floats over the hum of morning chatter. May your cup overflow, may your belly be filled, may your heart be steady. The words fit perfectly with the rhythm of the bubbles. You lean back, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. For a strange moment, you feel connected, not just to this brewer, but to everyone who ever woke up hungry and reached for something warm, something human. You think about how beer once paid workers, soothed the sick, and blessed the dead. It wasn't about getting drunk, it was about belonging. The brewer sighs contentedly, finishing his cup. RA gives light, he says, but beer gives life. You smile, a little tipsy, maybe from history itself. As you stand to leave, he calls out, "Don't forget your cup." You look down. It's empty now, sticky with the ghost of barley. You rinse it in the river and watch the froth drift away, golden in the morning sun. Somewhere downstream, another brewer will fill another jar, and another morning will start again, the same as it ever was. The Nile never stops flowing. Neither does breakfast. You walk on, lighter, warmer, amused. The world feels softer around the edges. And you can't help but think, if this is what liquid breakfast meant back then, no wonder the pyramids still stand. You follow the path as it bends inland, away from the noisy river and into a quieter quarter of reed-roofed houses. The air smells sweeter here, less like fish, more like honey melting in the sun. A woman sits cross-legged outside her doorway, crushing dried dates with a smooth stone. The pulp glistens deep brown, thick as jam. Beside her, a boy scoops a fingerful and licks it clean. She laughs, scolding him gently in a language that sounds like water flowing over pebbles. You sit down beside them, drawn by that smell. The woman nods toward a basket of baked goods cooling nearby, small golden discs sprinkled with sesame and shiny with glaze. For the morning meal, she says. For the ones who can afford sweetness. You reach out carefully. The surface is slightly sticky, like caramel. You take a bite. It's heavenly, dense, rich, spiced faintly with cinnamon bark and crushed carob pods. The filling, if you can call it that, is mashed date paste, warm from the sun. It's the closest thing you've had to dessert before noon. You're suddenly aware that you're eating something only the higher classes, maybe even priests or nobles, would enjoy daily. The woman tells you that honey and dates are gifts of the gods, symbols of rebirth. RA eats light. She says, we eat its shadow. Her laughter is low and amused, as though she's telling an inside joke with the universe. Behind her, a servant fans a small pot of melting beeswax over the fire. It's not for candles. It's for coating pastries, to preserve them from ants. You realize that even breakfast here is part ritual, part science. Farther down the path, you hear the gentle buzz of a beehive. You follow the sound. The hive is carved into an old clay jar tipped sideways, sealed with mud except for a small hole. The beekeeper wears nothing to protect himself, just quiet confidence and a slow hand. He smokes the hive gently with burning herbs, murmuring a prayer. The bees servare, he says when he catches you staring. They collect his tears. He opens the jar and reveals amber dripping thickly from a reed frame. The scent is intoxicating. Flowers, sunlight, a hint of dust. He lets a drop fall onto your palm. You taste it. It's wild, slightly bitter, full of desert thyme and date blossom. The beekeeper smiles. A drop a day keeps decay away. You think of modern influencers saying the same thing with better lighting. Some wisdom never dies, it just changes platforms. As you wander back toward the house, you notice an older man sitting at a small table, dipping flatbread into a mixture of honey and curdled milk. He gestures to you. Breakfast of scribes, he says proudly. Sweet for the mind. The tang of milk cuts through the honey's warmth, creating a flavor strangely familiar, something between yogurt and cheesecake. You realize that while the workers down by the river fill themselves with barley and beer, the educated classes start their mornings with sweetness and spice. Honey for clarity, dates for energy. A philosophy disguised as a snack. He scribbles something on a shard of pottery as he eats. An inventory of rations, maybe. Between bites, he talks about how scribes record the daily food allotments for temple workers. Without bread and honey, he mutters, no prayer would ever reach the gods. You almost laugh. Even divine bureaucracy needs breakfast. Then, in a more serious tone, he says, some believe honey can preserve the soul. When I die, I want to be buried with a jar. You glance at him, unsure if he's joking. He isn't. Archaeologists, thousands of years later, would find honey jars still golden and edible. But for now, it's just a humble man dreaming of immortality through sugar. A gust of desert wind sweeps through, lifting a few sesame seeds off the pastries like tiny sparks. You imagine the smell drifting toward the palace, teasing the royal kitchens awake. Somewhere out there, the pharaoh's servants are probably arranging trays of figs, bread, and honey for the divine breakfast of the living God. You lick a trace of honey from your finger and feel it cling stubbornly. It's ancient glue, tying you to this morning, to every human who's ever woken up wanting something sweet before facing the day. The woman from earlier calls out, do you like it? You nod, and she grins. Good. The gods like it too. You half expect thunder and approval, but only the bees hum, tireless and content. As you stand to leave, she presses a small bundle into your hand, a flat cake wrapped in palm leaf. For your walk, she says, and don't eat it all at once. Sweet things should be remembered, not finished. You thank her, the words catching oddly in your throat. She waves you off, her silhouette shrinking as you head down the road again, the rising sun catching on her jars of honey until they gleam like captured dawn. The air tastes different now, richer, like breakfast had suddenly become philosophy. You bite a corner of the cake, slow, careful, and it crumbles perfectly, sticky, fragrant, alive. The bees hum louder for a moment, as if approving. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder if the sweetness of that morning will ever really leave your tongue. By the time you return to the river, the sunlight has hardened into gold. The air ripples above the sand, bending the world like a mirage. You catch a whiff of smoke, sharp, oily, salty. It pulls you forward toward the docks, where fishermen are squatting beside long reed mats. Rows of glistening fish shimmer like spilled silver coins, each one split open, salted, and laid to dry under the watchful eyes of a few lazy cats. A man with hands tough as driftwood waves you over. You're late, he says with a grin. The Nile's been awake since dawn. You sit beside him, careful not to disturb the fish. He picks one up by the tail, flicks off a fly, and drops it into a clay pan balanced over coals. The skin curls instantly, hissing and crackling. Breakfast, he declares, and the word feels heavier here, like a reward for survival. The smell is intoxicating, rich, smoky, a touch of river mud. You notice baskets of onions, herbs, and something that looks like crushed coriander seed. He sprinkles a pinch into the sizzling pan. The aroma blooms instantly, chasing the salt with something bright and citrusy. He tells you they catch these fish in the shallow delta waters, where the Nile kisses the Mediterranean. The gods give us bounty twice, he says, once from the flood, once from the tide. You can't help smiling. Egyptians never miss a chance to make even lunch sound poetic. You taste a sliver. It's salty enough to sting, but behind that sharpness lies deep flavor, sun, smoke, and the faint sweetness of fresh water. You chew slowly, the crunch of charred skin giving way to soft, warm flesh. It's humble, perfect. The man laughs at your expression. You eat like a noble, he teases. But I eat like a god. He gestures toward a small shrine by the dock, a stone carving of Sobuk, the crocodile-headed deity, his teeth bared in eternal hunger. Someone has placed a few fish heads before the statue, still glistening. We feed him first, the fisherman explains. If we don't, he'll take what he wants. You glance nervously at the water, wondering how literal that threat is. He chuckles. Don't worry. He's probably full of merchants by now. Behind him, children run up from the boats carrying woven baskets. Their arms glisten with sweat and Nile spray. One boy drops a fish and groans as it slides toward the water. His mother yells across the dock, something like, "If Sobuk eats your breakfast, he'll take your dreams too." Everyone laughs. You realize even superstition here comes with punchlines. A young girl brings a jug of beer. Yes, breakfast beer again, and pours some over the sizzling fish. The liquid hisses, steam bursting upward in a fragrant cloud. The man breathes it in like incense. Beer makes everything better, he says. Even fish. You nod, trying not to imagine this technique trending on TikTok one day. The meal is shared without ceremony. Bread, fish, onions, a sip of beer. Hands move fast, stories flow faster. You listen as they talk about last season's floods, about taxes, about a crocodile that swallowed someone's goat. Their laughter fills the air, punctuated by the river's slow applause. You notice how balanced it all feels. The food is simple. Fish caught hours ago, bread baked that morning. But the joy is complex, deep. It's the kind of meal that doesn't just fill a stomach, it feeds belonging. One of the older fishermen leans closer, pointing upriver where the palace lies hidden behind the haze. The nobles eat the same fish, he says, voice low. But theirs are soaked in oil and spice until they forget they once swam. He spits into the river, then grins. We like ours honest. You glance again at Sobuk's statue, his stone grin catching sunlight. Maybe he's pleased. Maybe he's still hungry. The fisherman shrugs. The gods are like us, he says. They only behave after a good meal. The sky above the Nile shimmers white-hot. You wipe sweat from your brow, feeling the salt crust your lips. A young boy hands you a small packet wrapped in leaves. Inside is dried fish, meant to last for days. For the road, he says shyly. You tuck it into your belt, thanking him. As you stand, the river shifts tone, a deeper hum, steady and patient. It feels like it's speaking, though you can't catch the words. Maybe it's just the heat playing tricks, or maybe it's the Nile reminding you that all stories here begin and end with its current. You turn for one last look. The fishermen are still working, still laughing, still tossing offerings into the water. The smell of roasted fish trails behind you, blending with the sweetness of honey still lingering in your memory. You realize each village, each kitchen, carries a different note in Egypt's grand morning symphony. And as you walk on, belly full and sunburn beginning to threaten your neck, you smile at the thought. Even gods, it seems, need breakfast before ruling the world. You leave the river behind and follow a dirt path that winds toward a small cluster of whitewashed buildings. The smell of smoke fades, replaced by something softer, sweeter, the faint tang of milk warming in the sun. Bells jingle faintly, and when you turn the corner, you find a herd of cattle standing in the light, tails swishing lazily. Their hides shine bronze under the morning sun, and each breath from their wide nostrils sends up a small cloud of dust and warmth. A woman in linen robes waves from a shaded pen. She has a calm face, the kind that looks carved from patience. Around her neck glints a small bronze charm, an image of the goddess Hathor, her horns cradling the sun disk. The woman nods at the symbol and smiles knowingly. She gives the milk, she says, and we give it back. You follow her inside, where jars line the floor, each capped with leaves. The air smells thick, sweet, sour, alive. The woman dips a ladle into one of the jars and hands it to you. Morning's blessing, she says. You take a cautious sip. It's cool, unexpectedly tart, like thin yogurt with a whisper of honey. The texture is light, silky, slightly gritty from the clay cup. You swallow, and your throat tingles pleasantly. She watches, waiting for your reaction. Stronger than beer, isn't it? She jokes, and you laugh, because somehow it is. Cleaner, purer, a drink that feels both sacred and ordinary. Outside, young attendants pour milk into smaller jars, sealing some with wax for offerings. They hum as they work, low and rhythmic, a sound that fills the air with quiet reverence. One girl places a jar on a woven mat before a small altar decorated with flowers and a carved cow skull. She murmurs a short prayer in a voice so soft you almost miss it. May the goddess remember us when the fields are dry. The milk foams faintly in the sun, and bees hover close, tasting its sweetness. The woman waves them off gently. Hathor's messengers, she whispers. They always come first. You ask if everyone drinks milk here. She shakes her head. Only the temples. Only those who serve or give thanks. She gestures toward a young priest carrying a jar toward the sanctuary. The people of the fields drink beer. The people of the gods drink light. That phrase sticks with you. Drink light. You watch as the priest enters the shaded temple courtyard, where murals of cows and women adorn the walls, their faces serene, their eyes outlined in black coal. Incense smoke curls around him, mingling with the smell of warm milk. He places the jar on a small stone table, beside a loaf of bread and a few lotus blossoms. A fly lands on the rim, and he waves it away like an unwanted thought. You realize that breakfast here isn't about hunger, it's about balance. For the workers, it's energy. For the scribes, it's clarity. But for the priests, it's harmony, a conversation with gods conducted through food. You sit near the entrance, watching sunlight fall through the stone columns. A cat strolls past, tail flicking, as if inspecting the divine catering. You reach down to pet it, and it purrs, a soft, rumbling approval. Somewhere in the background, a chant begins, a hymn to Hathor, Lady of Joy, Mother of Milk, she who dances at dawn. The rhythm is slow, hypnotic, as if the singers themselves are half dreaming. The woman returns with a small clay bowl. Curds, she says proudly. The surface is speckled with herbs. You taste a spoonful. It's tangy, rich, and surprisingly refreshing. She explains that the curds are left overnight beside a warm stone, thickened by the desert air. The milk remembers, she says. It changes when we sleep. You nod, thinking about how memory itself seems to ferment in this place. How every jar, every loaf, every sip tells a story that refuses to spoil. Outside, the herd shifts lazily. Calves nudge their mothers, and a few farmers joke about the stubborn one that won't be milked today. You notice how even these simple moments carry grace. No one hurries, no one counts minutes. The day unfolds like milk poured into a bowl, slow, inevitable, luminous. The woman fills a small jug and hands it to you. Take some, she says. You'll need it for the road. The sun burns stronger beyond the fields. You thank her, bowing slightly without thinking, the way one would to a priest. She smiles. Drink slowly, she adds. The gods don't like greed before noon. As you step back into the sunlight, the heat presses against your face, thick as fabric. You take a careful sip from the jug. The milk tastes different now. Saltaire, maybe, or maybe that's just the sweat on your lips. You imagine the goddess watching, amused, her golden eyes following every traveler who dares to drink light. The road stretches on, a ribbon of white dust between the temple walls and the green floodplain. Somewhere ahead, the markets are waking, the sound of traders, the scent of frying onions, the promise of new stories. You tighten your grip on the jug, the cool clay grounding you in the heat. Behind you, the chant fades into the distance. Ahead, laughter rises. You keep walking, heart steady, the taste of the goddess lingering on your tongue. The first sound that greets you as you approach the city is chaos, beautiful, bustling, human chaos. Voices roll through the streets like waves, sellers calling out their wares, donkeys braying, metal pans clanging together in rhythm with the heartbeat of the morning. You've reached the market, the living stomach of ancient Egypt. The smell hits you first. It's not one smell, but 1,000 colliding. Warm bread, fish oil, onions, garlic, smoke, sweat, and something sweet you can't quite name. It's overwhelming, dizzying, but oddly comforting. You move deeper, dodging baskets of fruit and jars of lentils. People shout prices, haggle, laugh, argue, sometimes all in the same sentence. You pass a stall where a young man is frying thin cakes on a flat bronze pan. The cakes sizzle in a puddle of oil pressed from sesame seeds. He sprinkles them with chopped leeks and waves one at you, grinning. Hot, he warns, which, as you've learned by now, means eat it immediately. You bite it anyway. It's crisp on the edges, soft in the center, fragrant with herbs. You burn your tongue and laugh, because it's worth it. The vendor slaps the table in approval. Breakfast fit for a builder, he declares. You can't tell if he's complimenting you or his cooking, but you nod enthusiastically. Around you, the world spins in color and motion. Women with baskets of chickpeas scoop generous handfuls into jars. A spice seller fans the air above his stall, releasing clouds of cumin, coriander, and fennel. The scent is hypnotic, warm, citrusy, ancient. Smell this one, he insists, holding a pinch to your nose. You sneeze violently. He grins, delighted. You're alive, then. Farther down, a butcher's apprentice fans flies off a wooden table piled high with lamb and goose. Next to him, a boy sells bundles of dried herbs, advertising their powers. Good for the heart. Good for the gods. He cries. You almost buy one just for the enthusiasm. You stop by a woman selling figs, so ripe they look ready to burst. She hands you one, and when you bite into it, honey drips down your wrist. Eat, she says softly. You'll walk lighter. You nod, though you're not sure if she means physically or spiritually. All around you, food is both transaction and ritual. Coins clink, hands exchange, prayers murmur under breath. You realize this isn't just an economy. It's choreography, a living rhythm that's existed for millennia. Everyone here knows their steps by heart. A child tugs your sleeve, holding up a small clay cup. Oil, he offers shyly. Inside, golden sesame oil glows like sunlight trapped in liquid form. You dip your bread and taste. It's smooth, nutty, and almost floral. Good oil, the boy says proudly. From Memphis. You tell him it's delicious, and he beams. For a brief moment, the entire market feels suspended around that smile. Somewhere, a musician begins to play a small flute. The tune winds between stalls like a breeze. You follow it, weaving through merchants shouting blessings to Hathor, Ra, Anubis, each hoping their gods prefer good customers. The flute player sits on a crate, his eyes closed, playing for no one and everyone. A few children dance, their bare feet kicking up dust. You watch, entranced, realizing this city doesn't just wake up, it celebrates its awakening. A baker nearby slaps dough onto a hot griddle, and you can't resist another piece. The bread puffs instantly, filling the air with that same smoky scent that's haunted you since dawn. He flips it, sprinkles it with salt, and tosses it to you like a magician performing a trick. Eat before it cools, he says, or it turns back into sand. You laugh, but he isn't wrong. The crust crackles, then softens almost immediately in the heat. You sit by a fountain for a moment, letting the chaos swirl around you. A woman nearby feeds her toddler mashed beans with her fingers, murmuring a lullaby between spoonfuls. You can't help smiling. In the middle of the noise, there's a strange serenity, the kind only found in the repetition of daily survival. As you eat, you overhear a conversation between two merchants arguing about taxes, about the governor, about whether Ra's blessing is running late this year. The river's low, one says grimly. No fish, no bread, no mercy. The other snorts. Then we'll eat onions until the gods get jealous. They both laugh, and you realize humor is their armor against uncertainty. You look around again, at the tangled baskets, the shimmering heat, The people shouting and laughing, all stitched together by hunger and hope. The market isn't just a place, it's a pulse. Every loaf sold, every fig bitten into, every joke shouted across the crowd. Each is a beat in Egypt's living heart. Someone bumps your shoulder, muttering a quick apology. You turn, half expecting annoyance, but the man just grins, pressing a fresh leek into your hand. For luck, he says. You tuck it behind your ear. Why not? The day has grown louder, brighter, faster. You take one last look around, committing it all to memory. The shimmer of heat on metal bowls, the smell of frying onions, the laughter that never stops. Somewhere, someone shouts your way, "Don't leave hungry." And you realize you couldn't, even if you tried. You stand, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and the world tilts slightly from the noise and light. The market continues behind you, eternal and alive. You walk toward the quieter streets, where the air smells once again of river and stone, carrying with you the hum of human warmth, proof that even 5,000 years ago, mornings were never truly silent. You step nearer and hear the prayer. May Ra rise with strength, and may his servant rise with hunger no more. You can't help smiling, divine or not. Even kings need breakfast before running an empire. The servants move with careful grace, refilling cups, arranging dishes, brushing stray crumbs into ornate jars, as though disorder itself were blasphemy. A young girl fans the air with a palm frond while another sprinkles powdered lotus petals on the table. The scent drifts like memory, soft, slightly bitter, intoxicating. A boy in fine linen, perhaps a royal scribe, sits cross-legged nearby, nibbling a sweet roll while pretending to read a tablet. His lips are sticky with honey. When he catches you watching, he grins. "It's good to be close to power," he whispers conspiratorially, "especially when it smells like sugar." You chuckle. He lowers his voice. "They say the pharaoh eats little," he says. "The gods feed him in dreams." You look at the towering plates of fruit and bread and think, well, his dreams must have great catering. He points toward a gilded bowl filled with an amber-colored paste. "Lotus jam," he explains. "Made only for him. You eat it, you'll dream of flying." He dips a bit with his finger and offers you a taste. You hesitate, then try it. It's fragrant, floral, slightly bitter at first, then sweet, like honey soaked with night air. The scribe giggles. "Now you'll see the Nile from the sky," he says. You laugh, but for a moment, as the taste lingers, you almost believe him. A woman approaches carrying a small golden carafe. "Milk and honey for the divine," she says softly, pouring the mixture into a cup. The scent is familiar. It carries you back to the temple of Hathor, to the soft hum of prayers and the bleating of cattle. You sip, and the flavors intertwine. Milk, honey, sunlight, reverence. Every mouthful seems designed to remind you that even indulgence here is worship. You glance around. On the far wall, murals show Pharaoh dining with the gods, Ra handing him bread, Hathor offering wine. The painted figures are calm, timeless, content. You realize this isn't just breakfast. It's theater, a ritual that says, the world is still in order. The pharaoh eats, the sun rises, the Nile flows. A servant sets down a plate near you, a slice of bread drizzled with honey, topped with a few tiny figs. "For guests," she says. You blink, surprised, and thank her quietly. The bread is softer than anything you've tasted yet, airy and perfumed with spices you can't quite name. You take a bite, and it dissolves into warmth and sweetness. For a moment, you forget where you are. The hum of the fountain, the glint of gold, the lazy drift of incense, it all merges into a trance. You think about how the fishermen, the bakers, the priests, and now the pharaoh himself all share the same ingredients: grain, milk, honey, fruit. But here, in this room, those same foods become symbols, luxury disguised as holiness. You finish the last bite slowly, savoring it. Somewhere, a harp begins to play, a gentle melody that sounds like ripples on water. You close your eyes. The world feels very far away, and yet strangely close. The hum of power is quiet, almost tender, and the scent of lotus still lingers on your hands. When you open your eyes again, the table has changed. Servants are clearing plates, replacing them with scrolls and writing boards. Breakfast fades seamlessly into administration. The business of empire begins, fueled by figs and faith. You step outside, back into the glare of the sun. The sounds of the city rise again, distant, human, messy, alive. Behind you, the palace gleams like a mirage. Ahead, the road winds toward the temple quarter, where the scribes are already sharpening their reeds. You adjust your stride, still tasting honey on your tongue, still feeling the faint hum of luxury in your veins. Somewhere, in the gentle roar of the wind off the Nile, you think you hear a whisper. Power, too, begins with breakfast. The palace walls fade behind you, their gleam replaced by the muted tones of stone and papyrus. The air grows heavier, dustier, and the rhythmic scratching of reeds on papyrus begins to fill your ears. You've wandered into the quarter of the scribes, the men who write the thoughts of gods and kings alike, and yet, somehow, still forget to eat on time. Inside a shaded courtyard, a dozen of them sit cross-legged, their backs straight despite the heat. Sheets of papyrus are spread before them, pinned down with pebbles to stop the morning breeze from stealing their work. The smell of ink, black soot and gum, mixes with something faintly sour. You realize it's food. A servant passes between them, setting down wooden trays. On each tray sits a chunk of yesterday's bread, a small clay bowl of beans mashed with oil, and a slice of dried fish so thin it's almost transparent. The scribes murmur thanks but keep writing, nibbling between strokes. You watch as one man dips his bread into the bean paste without looking up. Eat fast, he says softly, as if talking to the papyrus. The ink dries faster than hunger. You sit beside him, curious. His hair is cropped close, his hands stained black. You ask if he ever eats anything warm. He shrugs. Warm food cools the mind. I need my mind sharp. He looks at you, a faint smile flickering across his lips. Though I'd sell a poem for a bowl of hot stew right now. Around you, the air hums with quiet concentration. The only breaks in rhythm are the soft crunch of bread and the occasional sigh of someone rereading a difficult line. You glance at one scribe's tablet. It's not an official record, but a letter home. Mother, the bread here is dry, but the work is noble. He's paused before writing the next line. You can almost feel the ache in the space he leaves blank. The servant returns with jugs of water. Except, of course, it's not water. It's the same thick barley beer you've tasted before. The scribes drink absent-mindedly, just enough to loosen their tongues, but not their thoughts. Beer makes words flow. One mutters, half joking. Another replies without looking up. Too much beer makes the gods laugh at your spelling. You can't help but chuckle. The first man grins. Ah, a listener. Then you must know, writing is hungrier than farming. He taps his reed pen on the table for emphasis. At least a plowman gets lunch when he sweats. We just get ideas. From somewhere deeper in the hall, a voice calls out a verse. Bread feeds the body, words feed the soul. Another voice answers, laughing. Then my soul's fat and my stomach's a ghost. The room erupts in gentle laughter, the kind that carries both pride and exhaustion. You realize this is their morning ritual, not prayer, not silence, but humor shared through the ache of ink-stained hands. One man, older than the rest, takes a slow sip from his cup. My father was a farmer, he says to no one in particular. He said the earth speaks if you listen. I told him papyrus does too. He dips his pen, pauses. He didn't believe me, so I wrote his words down. He gestures for you to try his breakfast. You accept a piece of bread, dry, dense, almost bitter. You dip it in the beans, and the oil softens the edges. It tastes like patience. Not luxury, not indulgence, but endurance. You chew slowly, listening to the quiet scrape of reeds against papyrus. The sound is hypnotic, steady, like waves lapping against memory. A young apprentice sneaks in late, panting. He bows awkwardly and sits at the edge of the circle. His tray arrives last. Only a crust of bread and a small piece of onion. The others tease him gently. Late riders get thin breakfasts. He grins sheepishly and takes a bite, his eyes bright with determination. You recognize that look. It's hunger, but not for food. The master scribe raises his head. Remember, he says, every word you write is a seed. Plant it well, and even the gods will read it one day. The apprentices nod, chewing in silence. You can feel the reverence in the air. This is their temple, their offering. Outside, sunlight filters through palm leaves, casting shifting patterns on the courtyard floor. Dust motes dance like slow sparks in the air. You close your eyes and listen. The scratching, the breathing, the distant hum of the Nile. It feels eternal, as if time itself sits cross-legged beside you, waiting for the ink to dry. You glance again at their meals, plain, repetitive, necessary. You think about the pharaoh's golden table, the fisherman's smoky feasts, the baker's warm loaves. The scribes get none of that. Their food is flavorless, but their work feeds empires. The irony isn't lost on you. Before you leave, the older scribe hands you a scrap of papyrus, still damp with ink. The words are simple. We eat little, but we remember everything. He presses it into your palm like a blessing. You tuck it into your belt beside the bundle of dried fish from the dock, realizing both are, in their own way, sustenance. You thank him, and he nods without looking up, already lost again in the rhythm of words. As you step outside, the sun catches the papyrus in your hand, turning the ink into tiny rivers of light. You smile, whispering to no one. Maybe memory is the richest breakfast of all. The wind rises, carrying the faint smell of smoke and spice from the temples ahead. The next chapter of morning waits there, humming quietly like an old hymn. The road slopes upward, away from the scribe's quiet courtyard, toward a stretch of sand and silence. The city fades behind you, replaced by the solemn rhythm of wind over stone. You follow a path lined with carved pillars and broken statues, faces half buried, eyes closed as if still dreaming. The air smells faintly of incense and dust, a blend that feels both sacred and strangely human. At the top of the hill, a tomb stands open to the morning light. Inside, the air is cool, still, heavy with centuries. You duck under the doorway, brushing sand from your shoulders, and there it is, a wall of painted scenes, perfectly preserved. Banquets, musicians, servants, and, curiously, breakfast. You move closer. A painted man sits cross-legged before a low table, reaching for bread. Beside him, a woman pours beer from a jar, her hand frozen mid-motion. On the floor below them are bowls of figs, honey, and fish. It's a breakfast offering to the dead, food for eternity. You feel a small shiver crawl down your spine. A priest stands nearby, humming a chant so low you almost feel it more than hear it. He looks up, his face hidden behind streaks of coal, and gestures for you to approach. You are welcome, he says softly. The dead always enjoy visitors. He shows you a set of jars lined against the wall, carefully sealed, each marked with symbols. Bread for hunger, beer for thirst, figs for joy, he recites. Even beyond life, we begin each day with breakfast. You notice a jar with a faint golden shimmer along its rim. Honey, you ask. The priest nods. To sweeten eternity. Even the gods have a taste for it. You imagine the person buried here, a noble, perhaps, or a high priest, waking in the afterlife, stretching like any mortal, expecting a meal waiting beside them. It's oddly comforting to think that hunger itself was seen as eternal proof of being alive, even after death. The priest kneels beside one of the stone basins and lights a pinch of incense. We feed their spirit, he murmurs, so they do not fade. The smoke rises in delicate spirals, filling the air with the scent of cedar and something faintly metallic, like rain on stone. You watch the patterns twist and dissolve, as if carrying invisible prayers upward. Does it work? You ask quietly. He smiles. The tombs are still here, aren't they? The names are still spoken. He picks up a small loaf, perfectly hardened by time, and places it beside a faded statue. As long as someone remembers their breakfast, they are not gone. You crouch, running your fingers along the carved hieroglyphs that line the wall. Among the prayers and titles, You notice tiny depictions of everyday life. Someone grinding grain, another baking bread, a child stealing a figure. It's almost tender, like a diary left open for millennia. Some say the afterlife is paradise. The priest continues, voice calm and steady. But paradise must begin with familiarity. So we give them what they loved most. He pauses, glancing at you. Would you want to wake hungry, even in heaven? You shake your head. He chuckles softly. Neither would they. He leads you deeper into the chamber. The light fades, and the flicker of his oil lamp casts long shadows across the walls. On one, you see a grand feast. Dozens of servants serving endless trays of food, the deceased reclining among them with a serene smile. Here, the priest says, they will never run out. You point at a smaller figure, an ox-headed god pouring beer into a cup. That's Hapi, he says. He brings the flood. But in the afterlife, he also brings breakfast. You laugh quietly, the sound strange against the stone. The gods really never rest, do they? No, he says. But neither does hunger. You stand in silence, letting the thought settle. The flickering light plays across the walls, animating the painted figures so they almost move. Bread passed from hand to hand, fish laid on a platter, a servant bending to pour honey. It feels alive, just for a heartbeat. The priest begins another chant, his voice echoing softly off the stone. The words are ancient, but the tone is unmistakable. A morning psalm, meant to greet the rising sun, even down here in the cool dark. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you imagine the tomb filling with golden light, the dead stirring gently, smiling as they reach for their eternal meal. When you open your eyes again, the smoke is thinning, the priest already retreating into another chamber. You bow slightly to the paintings, a silent thank you, and step back into the world of light. Outside, the sun has risen high, washing the tomb's entrance in blinding brilliance. You squint, the heat wrapping around you like a returning tide. Somewhere below, the Nile gleams again, as if reflecting not just the day but every morning that ever was. You glance back once more. The painted figures seem to shimmer in the doorway, forever eating, forever alive. And you can't help but think, maybe eternity isn't gold or music or clouds. Maybe it's a loaf of bread, still warm, waiting patiently on the table of forever. You follow the slope back down from the tombs, the desert heat pressing harder now, and the scent of smoke changing flavor. Less like burnt sand, more like spices waking up. Ahead, thin columns of incense rise from the temple quarter. The air grows thicker with every step, heavy with perfume and purpose. You can taste it before you reach it. Fennel, coriander, cumin, cinnamon. The first thing you see is a row of women grinding spices on wide stones, their hands stained gold and red from turmeric and saffron. The rhythmic scrape fills the courtyard, a steady whisper like bees at work. You stand there, breathing deeply. It's dizzying, the way scent alone can feel like memory. One woman looks up and smiles. Her teeth are bright against her sun-darkened skin. Hungry, she asks. You nod instinctively. She gestures to a basket beside her, flat loaves rubbed with oil and sprinkled with crushed cumin and caraway. You tear a piece. It's hot, crisp on the edges, and the aroma hits you like sunlight in your mouth. She laughs softly. That's priest's bread. We make it for the morning offerings. You glance at the temple gates rising behind her, painted deep blue with golden stars. The air seems to shimmer around them. Do the priests really eat all of it? You ask. She smirks. The gods take their share first. Whatever's left is generosity. You follow her gaze toward a long stone altar, where another group is arranging trays of food, bowls of lentils, roasted onions, herbs floating in oil, and, oddly, small cones of scented fat. The air around them ripples with heat, melting the cones slowly until they release tendrils of myrrh and cinnamon. That's breakfast for the gods, the woman explains. They like their meals fragrant. A priest steps forward, robes swaying, eyes lined in thick kohl. He carries a bronze ladle filled with what looks like warm milk mixed with honey. Steam curls up from it, catching the sunlight. He pours a little over the offerings, murmuring words that sound like wind moving through reeds. You catch fragments: life, breath, sweetness. Then, to your surprise, he drinks a mouthful himself and sighs deeply. Balance restored, he says to no one in particular. You edge closer, curious. The priest notices you, his expression kind but weary. You smell like the river, he says. You blink. I came from there this morning. He nods as though that explains everything. Then you've eaten the earth's breakfast. Here, we eat the skies. He gestures for you to follow him into the temple courtyard. The sunlight dims instantly, replaced by cool shade and the hum of chanting. Incense burns in tall bronze jars, their smoke curling like white ribbons toward the ceiling. The smell is so strong you can almost feel it pressing against your skin. At the center stands a low table piled with offerings: bread, fruit, milk, and bundles of fresh herbs tied with papyrus string. The priest picks up one bundle and holds it to your face. Smell, he says. You do. It's mint, sharp and clean. We place it near the food to invite joy. Even gods need a reason to smile before noon. He sprinkles ground cinnamon into a small flame, and the spark leaps high, releasing a burst of scent that makes your eyes water. Cinnamon, he explains, is memory. It reminds the soul what warmth feels like. You nod, though your throat burns a little from the smoke. Nearby, a young novice arranges tiny cups of oil and seeds on a tray. He catches your eye, grinning mischievously. It's funny, isn't it? The gods eat better than we do. You laugh, and he lowers his voice. But they never complain about spice levels. The priest gives him a stern look, but doesn't disagree. We prepare food for gods the way we wish to be remembered, he says. If we make it beautiful, maybe heaven will be generous when it's our turn. You watch him crush a clove between his fingers and scatter it over the offerings. The smell is sweet and sharp, filling the air like a living thing. Clove keeps the bad spirits away, he adds. And bad breath. You can't tell if he's joking. The ceremony continues, quiet, deliberate. The priests touch each bowl, each loaf, each jar, whispering words that blend together until they sound like a single breath. The scent grows thicker: cinnamon, myrrh, fennel, coriander, all fusing into a perfume of eternity. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the gods inhaling it, half amused, half pleased. When the ritual ends, the priests step back. Servants move in, carrying the food to smaller tables outside the gate. There, the poor and hungry wait silently in the sun. The same bread once offered to gods is now broken and shared among mortals. The smell of spices follows each piece. The woman from before catches your eye again, holding up a loaf. Eat, she calls. You've prayed enough with your nose. You laugh and take it. It's still warm, still fragrant, still divine. You bite into it slowly, and for a moment, the world feels perfectly balanced, like every prayer ever whispered in this land has found its answer in flavor. You realize that for the Egyptians, breakfast isn't just about hunger. It's a way of keeping the gods fed, the world turning, and the people, both living and dead, content enough to wait for another sunrise. As you finish your bread, a soft breeze moves through the temple courtyard, stirring the smoke so it drifts upward in golden coils. The priest watches it rise and smiles faintly. See, he says, even the scent finds its way home. You watch the last thread of smoke vanish into the bright sky. The morning's almost gone, but the day still feels young. Ahead, the city hums again, markets, laughter, life. Behind you, the temple still breathes spice and light. And between them, somewhere between heaven's incense and earth's hunger, you stand, carrying both on your tongue. You wander back toward the river, the breeze tugging at your tunic, and the scent of incense gives way once again to the smell of smoke and yeast. The morning light is softer now, the sharp edges of the sun dulled by dust and distance. Somewhere nearby, a rhythmic thump echoes, a hand hitting dough, again and again. You follow it, half-dazed from warmth and scent, until you find a familiar scene, a circle of bakers working around a glowing clay oven. But this isn't the simple bakery you saw earlier. Here, everything feels quieter, more deliberate. The oldest woman among them is kneeling beside the fire, stirring the ashes with a long reed stick. Her skin is weathered like baked clay, and her eyes gleam like candlelight. She looks up as you approach. "You've come looking for the secret," she says, not asking. You smile uncertainly. "The secret of bread?" She laughs softly. "Of course. The gods keep theirs, but we keep ours, too." She reaches into the ashes and pulls out a small clay jar capped with cloth. Steam hisses faintly as she opens it, revealing a pale, bubbling paste inside. The smell hits you first, sour, alive, familiar. "This," she says, "is the mother." You recognize it instantly, a natural yeast starter, the living ghost of every loaf. "We feed her each morning," she says, stirring gently. "Flour, water, a pinch of old dough. She never dies, only changes hands." You peer closer. The surface shifts with tiny bubbles, a slow heartbeat of life captured in clay. "People think bread is made from grain," she continues. "It's made from patience." She scoops a little into a bowl, adds flour, and starts to knead. Her hands move in slow circles, like she's coaxing a spirit awake. "If you rush her, she sulks," she murmurs. "If you forget her, she punishes you. But if you care for her, she rewards you with mornings like this." She glances up, eyes sharp. "You've eaten our bread already, haven't you?" You nod. "Then she's already in you," she says simply. A little piece of her, traveling forward. It's such a strange, beautiful thought that you don't know what to say. The woman continues kneading, dust rising in faint clouds. Around her, younger bakers carry trays of loaves shaped like flowers and fish, ready for the oven. One boy hums a tune, low and lazy, as he brushes each loaf with sesame oil. The smell is rich and nutty, curling upward in invisible ribbons. The woman leans close to the oven and presses her palm to its side. "You have to listen," she whispers. "The fire tells you when it's ready. It crackles when it's hungry, sighs when it's full." She tosses in a handful of dry reeds, and the oven flares briefly, its mouth glowing red. You can almost feel its heartbeat under the surface. She gestures for you to try. You place your hand on the warm clay. The vibration is soft but real, a deep hum, like the earth breathing under your palm. "That's life," she says quietly. "Everything that feeds you is alive first." You watch as she slides the new loaves into the oven, sealing its opening with a flat stone. Then she wipes her hands on her robe and sits beside you, exhaling slowly. "They call me the keeper," she says. "My mother was keeper before me, her mother before her. When I die, this starter will go to my daughter." You ask how long the mother has lived. She smiles, counting silently on her fingers. "Since the reign of Thutmose, they say, or maybe longer. The truth doesn't matter. The bread remembers even when we forget." You fall quiet. The air feels sacred, even without priests or gods. There's just fire, dough, breath, and time. The rhythm of human hands turning dust into sustenance. One of the younger bakers laughs, breaking the silence. "The old woman says her bread can talk," he teases. "Ask it to tell you your fortune." The keeper swats him playfully with a wooden spoon. "It already has," she says. "He's here, isn't he?" You grin, chewing the thought over like crust. Maybe she's right. Maybe being here, seeing this, tasting this, is the fortune. The air thickens with scent as the bread bakes. Rich, golden, impossible to ignore. When she finally removes the loaves, the crusts crack open with soft sighs, releasing ribbons of steam that smell faintly of nuts and honey. She breaks one apart and hands you half. You bite into it. It's perfect, crisp outside, soft inside, tangy from the wild yeast, warm as sunlight. She watches your face carefully. "Now you understand," she says. "Bread isn't baked. It's remembered." You nod slowly. The taste lingers long after the bite is gone, deeper than hunger, heavier than history. You realize that every loaf you've tasted since dawn, the fisherman's bread, the priest's offering, even the pharaoh's golden loaf, has started here, in this invisible chain of care stretching through generations. The keeper wraps the remaining bread in a palm leaf and presses it into your hands. "Take it," she says. "Eat it before sunset. After that, It belongs to tomorrow. You thank her, bowing slightly, but she waves you off. No thanks needed, she murmurs. You'll keep her alive. As you step outside, the sun hits you full in the face. The air is hot and buzzing with flies and the faint hum of the river beyond. You look down at the warm bundle in your hands, steam still curling from it, and it feels strangely heavy, like carrying a piece of time itself. You tear off a corner and chew slowly as you walk. The flavor is deep and comforting, like memory disguised as food. Somewhere behind you, the baker's laugh echoes softly, mingling with the hiss of the fire. And you think, with a strange certainty, no empire lasts forever, but bread does. You walk farther south along the Nile, past the fertile green edges where papyrus thickens and crocodiles lurk like lazy shadows. The air grows heavy with the smell of water and rot, then shifts, saltier, muskier, tinged with fish oil and smoke. You've reached the edge of Fam, where the marshland ripples with sunlight and danger. It's quieter here, but the silence feels alive, like the river is listening. A small group of men stand by the water, holding baskets of bread and dried fish. They whisper prayers and toss pieces into the river one by one. Each offering hits the surface with a soft splash before disappearing into the current. You watch, puzzled, until an older man with a scar across his cheek glances your way. Breakfast for Sobuk, he says matter-of-factly. He eats first. You look at the river again, just as the surface breaks. A large shape rolls beneath the water, slow, deliberate, ancient. You catch a flash of rough scales, then it's gone, leaving only a swirl of bubbles. He's polite today, the man adds. Sometimes he takes more than fish. He smiles, but you can tell it's not entirely a joke. Another villager drops to his knees, murmuring, "May his hunger be full." Then he tosses a handful of barley into the water, like confetti at a divine wedding. The grain spread out, caught in the sunlight, tiny golden stars sinking toward the dark. You can't help but ask, why feed a crocodile? The man's answer is simple. Because we live by the same river. He points to the mud huts scattered along the bank. When Sobuk is happy, the Nile is kind. When he's hungry, he pauses, his eyes scanning the water. We build smaller boats. The group chuckles softly, but the reverence in their tone is real. One of the younger boys steps forward and places a reed basket on the water. Inside is a small loaf of bread shaped like a fish, its crust blackened just slightly at the tail. The current catches it, spinning it gently before carrying it away. The boy whispers something. A personal wish, maybe, and the older men nod approvingly. Breakfast with a god, one of them murmurs. He's the only one who still shows up hungry. They gesture for you to join. A woman hands you a piece of fish, salted and dry. Throw it far, she says, so the little ones don't fight for it. You wind up and toss it with all the reverence you can manage. The piece vanishes into the glittering expanse. A moment later, the water ripples again, something big passing just beneath the surface. The woman smiles. He heard you. You stand there, watching the current, oddly moved. The villagers begin to pack up their baskets, chatting casually as if they hadn't just fed a god. One man wipes his hands on his tunic. Now we can eat, he says, and everyone laughs. They sit in a loose circle under a palm tree, passing around loaves, onions, and a clay jar of beer. You're invited without words. You sit, take a piece of bread, dip it into a paste of crushed lentils and herbs. The flavor is earthy, simple, good. The beer is warm and cloudy, but familiar now, comforting in its rough honesty. As they eat, the talk drifts between jokes, harvest gossip, and whispered superstition. Someone claims he once saw Sobuk walk out of the river, a crown of reeds on his head. He looked like a king, the man insists, and smelled worse than one. Everyone bursts out laughing. Even Faith here knows how to tease itself. The old man with the scar chews thoughtfully, then says, "You know, Sobuk isn't cruel. He's just like us. He eats what the Nile gives." He gestures toward the horizon, where the river curves endlessly into haze. The trick is remembering to thank him before you take your share. You watch as he finishes his fish, then throws the bones into the water, a final offering. The gods like clean plates, he says, grinning. A cool breeze stirs, carrying the scent of mud and reeds. The light shimmers on the water, dazzling your eyes. You realize this ritual, half prayer, half picnic, has been happening for thousands of years, long before temples and tombs, long before written prayers. It's the simplest kind of faith. Share your breakfast, live another day. As the villagers finish their meal, a little girl toddles toward the water with a crust of bread in her tiny hand. She tosses it clumsily, laughing when it splashes. Good girl, her mother says, scooping her up. Sobuk likes polite children. The crowd chuckles, but the tenderness in the moment lingers. You stand to leave, brushing sand from your knees. The scarred man looks up at you. You're leaving before he shows again? You shrug. I think he's full. The man squints at the river, where the surface ripples lazily. He's never full, he mutters, half smiling. That's why we keep coming back. You start walking, the sound of laughter fading behind you. The Nile stretches endlessly beside the path, glinting under the noon sun, hiding its secrets just beneath the shimmer. You think about all the hands that have fed it, all the prayers tossed into its current, all the breakfasts lost and remembered. For a moment, the world feels perfectly balanced, the living and the divine sharing a meal, the river swallowing both blessing and bread. You take a last look back at the water, and for the briefest instant, you imagine a great eye-opening just beneath the surface, ancient, patient, amused. Then it's gone, and only ripples remain. You breathe out, the taste of salt and barley on your tongue, and whisper to the wind, "Eat well, old friend." The road narrows again, curving away from the lush green of the Nile and into a quieter stretch of sand and wind. The sound of the river fades until it's nothing but a faint murmur, like memory retreating behind you. What replaces it is silence, and then, faintly, the crackle of a distant fire. You follow it. Ahead, a thin line of smoke drifts from the doorway of a crumbling bakery, long abandoned. The mud brick walls lean like tired shoulders, and the roof is half collapsed. Yet inside, someone is working. You hear the scrape of a pot, the rustle of grain being poured. An old man sits by the ashes of what used to be a great oven. His hands move slowly, methodically, as he grinds dried barley with a smooth stone. "You're late," he says without looking up. His voice sounds like gravel soaked in smoke. "I didn't know anyone was still baking here," you reply. He chuckles. "No one is. I just can't stop pretending." You step closer, and your eyes adjust to the dim light. The shelves around him are blackened, their surfaces lined with old loaves, crumbled, fossilized, forgotten. He picks one up and breaks it in half. The inside is hollow, the scent faint but still there. Barley, smoke, salt. "I keep these," he says, "for company." You realize this was once a communal bakery, maybe the heart of a whole neighborhood. He gestures to the walls. Families came here every morning. Bakers worked the ovens from sunrise to moonrise. The air used to sing. He taps his chest. I can still hear it. You sit across from him, watching as he stirs the coals. "Why stay?" you ask. He shrugs. "Someone has to remember how it smelled." Outside, the wind rises, carrying sand through the cracks. The old man leans forward, shielding the last glow of the fire. "You know," he murmurs, "when the flood stopped one year, the loaves went small. People blamed the pharaoh. But really, the earth just forgot how to rise." He smiles faintly. "I think she's learning again." He motions for you to hand him a small jar near the corner. Inside is flour, pale and gritty. "We bake for no one now," he says, mixing it with a bit of water from a cracked jug. But the bread doesn't care. It just wants to be born. You watch his trembling hands knead the dough. The motion is familiar, the same rhythm you've seen all morning. Bakers, mothers, priests, even children repeating the same act of creation. It's hypnotic, sacred. He hums an old tune as he works, something between a lullaby and a prayer. "My teacher used to say," he murmurs, "bread is memory you can eat, but only if someone remembers how to make it." You help him shape the dough into small rounds. He sets them carefully on a flat stone beside the last of the embers. The smell returns, faint but real, smoke, grain, time. It feels like an echo of every breakfast you've tasted today, compressed into one fragile scent. He looks at you, eyes suddenly sharp. Do you hear it? You listen. At first, there's nothing. Then, softly, almost impossibly, you hear faint laughter, distant voices, the hum of life that once filled this place. It's not real, and yet, somehow it is. The old man smiles. They're here. The bakers, the children, the mothers. The smell calls them back. The loaves begin to puff slightly, the crusts cracking like tiny sighs. He takes one off the stone and hands it to you. It's rough, barely baked, still soft in the center. Taste, he says. You do. It's dry, smoky, uneven, but the flavor is alive. The same sourness, the same whisper of wild yeast, the same heartbeat of the earth. It's the taste of persistence. He watches you chew, his expression unreadable. Not bad for a ghost, he says with a small grin. You look around again, the cracked walls, the broken shelves, the ash-covered floor. You could rebuild this place, you say quietly. He shakes his head. No need. The bread will find another oven. It always does. He gestures toward the open doorway, where sunlight streams through the dust. Every time someone wakes hungry, I'm still here. You sit in silence, finishing your bread. The wind sighs through the ruined doorway, scattering ashes that glimmer briefly before vanishing into the light. For a moment, you think you smell honey again, faint and sweet, threading through the smoke like a memory refusing to die. The old man begins humming again, the same low tune. You rise, brushing dust from your hands. Thank you, you say? He nods, still staring at the fire. Eat well, he murmurs. That's the only prayer that ever mattered. Outside, the heat presses down like a blanket. The ruins behind you glow faintly in the sunlight, as though the ovens inside are still burning. You walk on, the taste of ash and barley lingering in your mouth, strangely comforting. And for the first time, you realize this story of breakfast isn't just about food, it's about survival. About refusing to vanish, even when everything around you crumbles. The Nile glints ahead, waiting patiently, as it always has. You head toward it, one last meal left to remember. By the time you reach the river again, the sun has softened, laying itself gently across the water. The Nile is quiet now. No shouting fishermen, no traders arguing over barley, no smoke curling from distant ovens. Only the slow rhythm of waves against stone and the soft rustle of reeds swaying in the breeze. You walk along the bank until the sounds of the world dissolve into stillness. You find a spot beneath a palm, the shade trembling over your face. The air smells faintly of silt and sweetness, like bread cooling after the oven. You sit, unwrapping the last bundle of food you've carried since morning, a small loaf from the keeper's oven, a piece of dried fish from the dock, and a few crushed dates now sticky with heat. The humble remains of a journey through 5,000 years of breakfast. You take a slow bite. The bread is tougher now, the crust dry, the sweetness fading, but the flavor is still there, soft and persistent, like memory refusing to fade. You close your eyes, chewing slowly, and the morning begins to replay itself. The laughter of bakers, the hum of priests, the hiss of beer, the quiet wisdom of women grinding honey and dates. The world folds in on itself until every taste, every scent, every heartbeat becomes one. Across the river, the light turns amber. You can see the faint outline of the tombs glowing on the far bank, their entrances kissed by fire-colored sun. You think of the painted nobles there, eating their eternal meals, their spirits forever chewing through loops of dawn. Maybe they can smell what you're eating now, one mortal's last crumb, offered back to time itself. You dip the fish into the river before taking a bite. The salt mixes with the sweetness of the dates, the warmth of the bread, and the cool taste of the Nile. It's imperfect, but it feels right, like eating the story of a civilization all at once. You smile faintly. Even in this final meal, the Egyptians got it right. Simplicity holds eternity better than gold ever could. Somewhere behind you, the faint cry of an ibis cuts through the silence, a voice half bird, half flute. The sound echoes across the river, wrapping around the landscape like a benediction. You lean back on your elbows and let the wind touch your face. The last of your bread falls apart in your hand, scattering crumbs across the sand. Ants find them almost immediately, their tiny bodies glittering in the light. You watch them march, each one carrying a fragment, as if continuing the story you've now finished. A procession of tiny priests, taking your offering into the unseen. You think of the words the old scribe gave you. We eat little, but we remember everything. He was right. Food is memory disguised as flavor. Every bite carries a piece of those who came before. Their work, their laughter, their prayers whispered over loaves and jars. And in eating, you become part of it. The air cools. The wind changes direction, brushing against the river's surface until ripples shimmer like veins of gold. The smell of clay and barley drifts faintly through the dusk, as though the earth itself has decided to exhale. You rest your head back against the tree and close your eyes. You think of the bakers who still whisper to their dough, the fishermen who feed crocodiles for luck, the priests who perfume the air so the gods might notice, the children stealing figs before breakfast bells, the scribes nibbling dry bread beside wet ink. All of them moving through their mornings, unhurried, content, unaware that 5 millennia later someone would still be tasting their world. A calm settles over you. The day's noise has dissolved into one long exhale. You can almost hear the Nile breathing beside you, steady, eternal, motherly. Somewhere deep in its current, perhaps, Sobuk turns in his sleep, the river's scales glittering beneath the last light. You open your eyes once more, and the sky has turned the color of baked clay, cooling after dusk. The stars blink awake, scattered crumbs across a black table. You smile. Even the heavens look like breakfast now. Your body feels heavier, the warmth of the meal seeping deep into your limbs. The sand is cool beneath your hands, and the hum of insects fades into something like a heartbeat. The world is slowing down, its pulse aligning with yours. You breathe out, long and soft. The taste of barley still lingers on your tongue. The Nile whispers beside you, its voice ancient and kind. The air thickens. The light dims further. You feel yourself sinking, not falling, but floating, drifting between wakefulness and dream. You can almost see the baker's oven glowing behind your eyelids, the river flowing through your pulse, the gods leaning down to listen. And as the night folds over you like linen, you hear the faint echo of laughter, of footsteps, of grinding stone. The city hums again somewhere far away, eternal and distant, still waking, still eating, still remembering. You let it fade. You let everything fade. Now, the world is soft, the river gentle, and your breathing matches the slow rhythm of time itself. End of script. Sweet dreams.